It's time once again for another installment of the Reserve List Top 10. These are the hottest selling cards on the Reserve List this week from June 28th till July 6th of 2024. And yeah, we've got quite a few cards to cover and quite a few high value targets that players will want to be aware of. Stay tuned, it's coming up. Welcome back, guys. MTG Moxman here, and we are going over the top 10 hottest selling cards in the Reserve List. A reminder before we start today's video, if you enjoy the content, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Turn on your notification bell, new content every single day. And of course, you can also support me on TCG Player because I have an affiliate link found in the description of this video. Click the link, use it, and we get some money here on the channel. Now let's jump right into the number 10 card this week. This is Taiga, and this is coming to us from Revised Edition. Now, it only had 24 sales this week. It started out very strong though, and I thought the numbers were going to be higher, but we ended off with a fairly low number, but still a high value, because as a dual land goes, they're all expensive. They're all pricey. $8,639.76. That's a lot of money going into a single card, and you have to ask yourself, why this card and why this time? Well, most of you guys recognize right here, it is green and red, and with everything we saw this week in the market, from all the new cards coming up and the spoilers from Bloomborough, all the Commander players who are building decks like this, they seem to be taking a stab at this particular card. And on a side note, Wooded Foothills also had big sales. Not enough to make the top 10, but it's enough to mention here in this video to give you some context of what's going on. Now, our number 9 card this week is Wheel of Fortune from Revised. Now, as I go through this card, yes, 30 sales happen. That's $9,299.70 in total sales volume. And the card's actually recovered about 5% of value in the last week or so. But the bigger thing I want to mention is some unlimited copies, a few copies of Collector Edition, International Edition, and an alpha copy hit my board, so it's something to be aware for you guys. There's a few sales going on this card that are a lot higher priced targets, a lot more money being spent, but it's something to be noted as, because those cards selling were not like framed up as BGS copies. They were played copies being bought, so it's interesting to see if somebody's building a collection or maybe just buying this card because it's amazing. Remember, it's a sorcery that says all players must discard their hands and draw 7 new cards. And after you own one, you never have to own it again. It's one of those cards that's kind of an investment over the long term of your game life in this game because it's awesome. Now, our next card is going to be from Urza's Legacy. This is Grim Monolith. This card comes in this week with 33 sales. Hasn't been on the board for quite a while. Average price is $314.98 per copy US, and the total volume sold is $10,394.33. Now, I'm going to take that with a caveat of explaining to you guys that a lot of the copies sold were actually heavily played. So, it's people who actually want the copy. Remember, near mint kind of spells out people who are the higher priced individuals who say, I've got to have a certain amount of value to my card. But on the same hand, they also see a heavily played copy as a player who wants to enjoy the card and finds it at a really good price. There's reasons why we buy different copies. When you take a look at Grim Monolith here, it does not tap during your untap phase. It adds 3 colorless mana to your mana pool, but you can pay 4 to untap it. You know the infinite mana loops that go with this card just as well as I do. So, Chippy, way to go. It's a great card. Now, let's take a look at our next card this week, Pendrel Miss, coming to us from Weatherlight. This card still continues to lose a little bit of value, but it's staying here on the list this week with 40 sales with a total volume of $296.40. This card average price is $7.41 on the open market for a near mint copy, and the 40 sales is not a big dent in the market and not enough to curb the losses we're seeing on this card. But remember, cards like this have been a lot higher, so it's always something to keep in mind. If you can get it cheap and you've always wanted one, it's a good opportunity. As an enchantment for 1 blue and 3 generic, this card does state that each creature gains during your upkeep, pay 1 or bury this creature. Depending on the deck you're playing and how you're building your deck, this is an amazing card to own. I do have a couple of play sets myself. I find it highly effective in Commander in what I call like the anti-creature deck. Nobody attack me, just leave me alone, let me stew in my corner until I can get my deal done. So it's a great card to own at a very inexpensive price. Now our next card is not the same as this one, so let's take a look At Weatherlight, again, sure, great card, but we're taking a look at Scorched Ruins. This card still commands a price of $85.98 per copy, and the 47 sales represents a real interest in building with Eldrazi from Modern Horizons 3, so the appetite for this card really hasn't dwindled. The total value spent was $4,041.06. That's for near mint copies, and basically at this point in the market space, a lot of players are buying the lightly played and near mint quality copies. So it's a good card at a good price. What does it do? Well, it's a land. And it says when Scorched Ruins comes into play, sacrifice 2 untapped lands or bury Scorched Ruins, but it taps to add 4 colorless mana to your mana pool. There is a reason to buy 4 of these, and this is just simply an Eldrazi Haven card. It's amazing. Now, our next card has been at the top dog spot last week. It drops all the way down because it sold a meager 50 copies. This is the Heart of Yava. With the 50 copies have sold, it's just $125, guys. There's lots of copies still available. This Alliances card does something that players like for Nadu in Commander. So when you take a look at it, it says, comes into play, you gotta sacrifice a forest, right? Or you gotta bury the Heart of Yava. It does tap to add 1 green to your mana pool, which is spectacular. And for $2.50, you're hoping for something a little more, and it's that last ability that's gonna get the job done for you. And what this is going to do is a target creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn. And that +1/+1, of course, is gonna give you some card draw. I have seen this card used twice now. It is not the most efficient way, but it's also an added bonus card where you can just give something +1/+1. So it's not doing as badly as I thought, and it's very inexpensive for players to buy it. So I can see why a budget deck's going with it. Our next card, this one has a bit of a story, so if you hang around to the end of the video, I'll cover this one a little more in depth because there's more information for this. This is Squandered Resources. 53 sales this week, total value $1,880.97. Now, the average price for this card is $35.49, but way back in like 2019 to 2020, this thing was really cheap. It was like $1 a card, next to nothing for players who wanted to buy it. Now, what does this do? Well, this enchantment says, sacrifice a land. Add to your mana pool 1 mana of any type the sacrificed land could produce. Play this as a mana source. So people would tap their land out, sacrifice all their land, basically doubling their mana supply. And there is reasons to do it. Remember that. There is some disgusting stuff out there with Eldrazi that most players haven't thought of yet. Our next card comes to us from Homelands. And I did not expect to see this card, even though I love it. This is Didgeridoo, and this thing did a lot of business this week. Didgeridoo came in with 121 sales. Now, the total value of that is $1,115.62, and there was absolutely no reason why this card suddenly spiked up and had this amount of sales at one time. People were buying up to 20 copies on things like TCG Player. I know a couple local stores reported back 5 or 6 sales. But when you add all those sales together, somebody did a mini buyout. It did cost them a little bit more money than I think they expected because these copies are still $6 and $7. Now, Didgeridoo cost 1 to get this bad boy out. It is an artifact that says pay 3, take a Minotaur from your hand and put it directly into play as though it were just summoned. And I've always argued the fact that with Tribal and Minotaurs coming around sooner or later, it makes perfect sense to own 4 copies of that card. Amazing. Okay, Liege of Hollows again. Weatherlight cards are being hit left, right, and center this week. The number 2 spot is Liege of Hollows with 127 sales. That means a total value of $944.88. So what are we getting for our money? Why are players buying the card? Well, it's pretty simple. It's Bloomburrow. As most of you guys are aware at this point, the sales of the modern cards I did yesterday saw next to no sales as players get ready for their appetite, but these are cards people need because of the cards that will be in Bloomburrow. This is a Summon Spirit that's a 3/4. It says if Liege of Hollows is put into a graveyard from play, each player may pay any amount of mana and put that many 1/1 green squirrel tokens into play. That's right, guys. You can get a lot of squirrels. A lot of squirrels for your bank, for your buck. It's a great card. Awesome to see it. And it's really cheap, guys. A card like this is so inexpensive. Owning 4 for like $30 makes sense. But the number 1 card is not the same beast. This is Deranged Hermit. This thing comes to us from Urza's block. And as you can see, 225 sales represents $17,325 even, an average price now of $77, a far cry from what we saw only 6 months ago. Market value $55, and I'll tell you right now, people are buying any copy they can get their hands on under the sun. I did a video earlier this week. You guys can go ahead and check that video out. Just check my library. We're over like 2,000 videos now. You'll see it there. So this card has Echo, which is great. It just kind of disappears, but if you don't pay the mana, but you will pay it. When Deranged Hermit comes into play, put 4 squirrel tokens into play, treat them as 1/1 green creatures, and all squirrels get +1/+1. But the Echo effect looks like a drawback, but there's lots of ways of bouncing and getting around it, so keep an eye on this card because players are building toward Bloomburrow like you would not believe. And now it's time to get to the wrap-up and talk about what we saw today. Now, we're here at the wrap-up of the video. Great you made it to the end. Congratulations. A lot of players don't make that full 12, 13 minutes, but here we are. And this is what I want to remind you guys. Squandered Resources was like a $1 card. It cost next to nothing. And there was somebody back then who, I was new at the channel, okay? I had like 20 subs and somebody said, you should just buy 4. Buy 4 of that card. It's like $4. Buy whatever, just get a couple of copies because this card will definitely go somewhere. And since it's on the reserve list and since it doubles mana and there's so many ways in the future of bringing back lands, this is a card players are going to pay attention to. And here we are. Squandered Resources has slowly, unlike other reserve list cards that have slipped in value up and down, Squandered Resources keeps kind of creeping along very slowly, very subtly, but it's going up. Keep that in mind because it's such a cheap casting cost enchantment that it does some crazy things. Deranged Hermit, I told you so is the best I can say for that card. Legion Hollow's kind of a surprise. Didgeridoo, that's a buyout that I did not see until I started counting my weekly update cards. And I didn't get answers back from a lot of stores this week. I think they're really busy, so I'll have to wait and see how that all pans out in next week's videos when I get some late replies on how things were going in the market. So keep this stuff in mind, guys. The modern cards we saw on Saturday's video, the sales were like less than half of what they normally are. Players are prepping up for Bloomburrow like you wouldn't believe. Assassin's Creed, I feel bad for you guys. I feel bad for the Assassin's Creed fans. Bloomburrow fans, let's face it. We're consumers. Consumers. Yeah, you get it. And we're buying what we want. And Bloomburrow, it is what we want. It's interesting to see how players are spending their money. I hope Wizards of the Coast learned something. Anyway, wrap up, guys. Thanks again for being here. Thanks for stopping by the channel. I do have a live stream every Sunday, 6:30 Eastern Standard Time. I look forward to seeing you guys there. And for everyone who's been subscribing to the channel, thanks again, guys. We are 480 away from 23K. Epic. Guys, have a great one. Epic. Guys, a big shout out and thank you to my patrons. Because of the patrons you see on my channel every day, every time you see these credits, these kind of supporters of the channel who make sure the daily uploaded content goes out, make sure that everything gets paid for here on the channel, I always got to say a special thank you to them. Whether you're a YouTube membership member or a patron, guys, you make it happen here. So thanks again, everyone. Okay, I'll be honest, guys. This is 3:14 in the morning. We had a crazy day here with the family. So I got to be honest. I couldn't email all the stores. It was too late. I'm not going to get answers back. I did the best I could. The numbers actually could have been higher than this. But this is the best I could do with the data I had available. So I have to go with that. The didgeridoo thing threw me off. Crazy. Because if didgeridoo ever gets Minotaurs, whoever bought the 100 and something copies, if that goes to like a... If they gave us enough Minotaurs that were decent to be tribal, that person's going to stand to make a fortune. It happens. It happens. Oh, I went and saw the new Despicable Me 4. Great movie for the kids, man. My son was 13 and he was Minnie Mouse was having a blast. Oh, anyway, guys, we'll see you tomorrow. Live stream. Moxman sleep. See you soon.